Hello everyone, this is Jimmy and welcome to episode 32 of Celestial Journey. Today we're going to continue down our trek with creative items, moving on to the creative jetpack. So last time we ended with the crafting of the creative flux pack, which I have sitting in a chest over here. If we wear it in our chest slot, we can give up flight in return for a 20,000 Arvatic free source. Spoiler, it's not worth it. So I'm not going to use it. It's just going to sit here until we, use it to craft the jetpack. Now, one thing I really like about this pack is the way that the creative items are tiered. It's not like, you craft one creative item and then suddenly you have access to, 90% of them, right? It's that each creative item adds a couple new challenges. They like slowly introduce you to the late game challenges of the pack or the end game challenges. In this case, the creative jetpack introduces us to gems, namely fire and air, but there's a couple other types too, I think, that are just as useful later. There's also earth and water. But let's take a look at these. We'll start with the two that are in here. The fire gem is made of a lot of red and fiery things. So, it introduces a handful more challenges, right? We're going to need to automate runes in large volume. We're going to, I guess it's, last episode I mentioned the netherite problem. It's probably time to tackle that. We have to make sure we can make pyrotheum dust in large volumes and niter and yada, yada, yada. Cool. So that's a fire gem. And part of the reason that we need a lot of it is while, for the jetpack we only need 4 and 2 air gems, later we need 1 of each gem plus some other stuff to make piles of neutron. These are like nuggets, right? They're the nugget form of a nugget. And then basically for 9 more of each gem, we can turn it into a full nugget. So effectively each gem is like a quarter of a nugget of neutron, or a pile of neutrons. So we're going to need 81 gem blocks approximately, or 81 gems approximately for each neutronium ingot. And we need to make at least 6 neutronium ingots before we can make the neutron collector. Like we have to make 6 neutronium ingots by hand before we can make the neutron collector. And afterwards, even then, like it takes about 2 days for the neutron collector to pay for itself. So we want to make a handful of these, just to like kickstart our neutron process. So yeah, with that, then let's start today by tackling the 4 gem types. So again, even though they're not strictly necessary that we do it now, if we start one, we may as well do all 4 of them. So starting with fire. I'll put off Botania runes because we'll do all 4 of those together. These crystals I actually can already make, although we might need to make them in larger quantity than I have now. Let's see. In fact, let's see. These crystals I can auto-craft, right? And that's because... Can I make 1,000? It's because I'm producing like all this stuff like fire water in a vat. The auto-crafting this in applied energistics is very it's challenging. In fact, this crafting plan is going to take like 30 minutes to generate, so I'm just going to cancel it. It's challenging because applied energistics doesn't like recipes that reuse items. It does understand that it can reuse the item, but for some reason it takes it literally forever to generate the crafting plan. So I'll have to set this up in a way that these lava crystals can be produced without using the applied energistics crafter. So how about I'll go set up a RF tools crafter to handle this. So the big change we make is that the recipe now no longer includes the orb. What hit me? How did something hit me? Whatever. It no longer includes the blood orb. Instead, we just keep the blood orb in the crafter. So now when we request fire crystals, what are they called? Fire gems? The lava crystal? There we go. Now when we request these, the crafting plan generates immediately because it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to. How do I say? It doesn't have to calculate like cyclically that the orb is being reused. So we start this. Now it dumps all the materials into here. I still have to save the recipe in. I don't understand what's hitting me. Ooh, this is actually kind of challenging. I didn't consider this. What do I set this to? So I want the orb to stay, but I want the bucket. Okay, hold on. I'm going to figure out what's hitting me. Hello? Am I crazy? There's nothing here hitting me, but why is my armor making the dinging sound? I don't understand. Alright, whatever. I'm gonna try a few things about whether I should set this to external or external. Alright, so in case I was a little unclear, the problem is that we have this life orb, which we want to reuse, but we also get buckets, which we don't want to reuse. Right, so the issue is that if I leave this recipe on external C, it'll leave the bucket and the life orb in here, but there's no way to extract from the blue box. Therefore, the only solution I have is to set it to external mode and cycle the life orb back while leaving the buckets alone. Like while leaving the buckets, let the buckets go to output, and then we can extract the buckets through, we extract the buckets into the interface to be reused. So this is probably actually significantly slower than crafting them in the, letting the ME system craft them in its assembler. However, it means generating the crafting plan is faster. So in the end, I think this is a slight improvement. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's start easy and work our way to more difficult. Let's do that. So fire essence is trivially easy. We just grow those. Pyrotheum dust, we just have to craft. So why don't I set up one of these slots here to be our pyrotheum dust crafter. There you go. Just like all the other crafters here, I want to be able to make this without crafting cards. So inputs are blaze rods, sulfur, redstone, and since we have plenty of blaze rods, I'm again not bothering to pulverize it. I'm just straight up crafting blaze rods into pyrotheum dust, or into blaze powder. Alright, so that's the dust covered. The next easiest thing is the niter. Niter is just any color niter with red dye, and of these, I think there's only one color of niter you can craft. I think that's the yellow one. Yeah, the rest of them are just dyed. So we'll craft, I'll go ahead and dedicate another crafter thingy to always be making niter. By the way, I did add a second crafter making alumentium because I discovered that one is not fast enough to keep up with our Zaracium production, which, by the way, we now have 12,000 of. Alright, this thaumatorium here, glowstone is provided via export bus, Essentia is provided via this transfuser, which ultimately pulls from our provider. And I'm storing all the niter as yellow niter for now. We can dye it just in time into whatever color we need it to be. Because I think there's various recipes that use, like this uses red niter, but there are various recipes that use, other colors of niter specifically. Alright, with that, I've hit all the low-hanging fruit. So let's move up to the mid-tier of difficulty. And I'd say ember grass is probably next. Oh, we can trade for it. Okay, well that makes it easy. I was going to say there's a couple options for embergrass. Option 1 is to make it in the cauldron. Option 2 is to spread it. So if we grab ember... Well, let's try the spreading one a little bit more. But I experimented with this a little bit when we first got it, and it was quite difficult. The thing is, when you place embergrass, over time it has a small chance that it'll spread to another like random block. But that spread doesn't seem to be affected by the imaginary time block. So even though this is, well within imaginary time block range, the spread is still very slow, which makes it, a little difficult. But the fact that we can trade for it means that I think I'll just trade for it. So let's get ourselves a level 4 hedge witch to trade with. I kept getting hedge witches with the wrong level 4 trades. I kept having to coming back here for new ones. I think now I've run out of hedge witches, so time to reroll our villagers. Sorry. Am I a bad person? There you go. Got one. 3 emerald for 2 embergrass. I suspect that's a bad rate, but good enough for me. Alright, that's embergrass out of the way. Next up, condensed netherite. So I mentioned before, I think I'm just going to go make the dimension out of netherite ore. However, that means I do need a, first of all, I think it's called a material absorber. Craft one of these. And more importantly, I need a piece, or I need 128 pieces of netherite ore, which I suspect spawns in the nether. So I'm gonna put a silk touch quarry in the nether and go mine a little bit until it gets, the netherite ore I need. I think I got my netherite and my blood gem mixed up. Netherite we actually have a ton of because it comes from mob drops. So I'm currently sitting on 1.7 million of it, and we can, compact, well, I assume we can craft ingots into blocks by hand. Yeah, so we can just compact that by hand. And in fact, if I'm stored in a compacting drawer, which it looks like I am, I already have it compacted into netherite blocks. So we just have to compact that into condensed netherite. So yeah, condensed netherite is done. However, I think at some point we will need, I think it was blood gem. Yeah, blood gem is what I got it confused with. So I came to the end, set up a filter for blood gem ore, and I figured, well, I don't even care for draconium ore. May as well get that while I'm at it. So I'm going to set up a quarry that only, a silk touch quarry that only mines these two ores, and see if we can, use that to provide us with blood gem in the future. All right, I started up our quarry here. It's since it's only mining a few blocks, it shouldn't use much power. Not that power is an issue, but it'll take it a little bit. But it's chunk loaded here. Sooner or later, I'm sure it'll get the 128 blocks of blood gem ore I need for the material absorber. But that's a thing for later. Hey, we're at 5. All right, so let's head back to the overworld. Well, I've put it off about as long as I can. I think it's time we tackled the runes. So each of the 4 gem types, which we need in basically equal quantities, uses frozen block, and it uses one of the basic runes, air, and lastly fire. So we're gonna have to make all 4 of them. It's basically 4 runes per gem, and then basically each gem is a component in one pile of neutrons. Right? So we're gonna have to make tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands. But at least tens of thousands. So that's just so we have an idea of the scope we're going for. So let's, I guess, tackle these more or less one by one. I have to make sure that all of these items are in our ME system and can be provided on demand without a crafting card, which means that, for some of these it's easy, like mana steel ingots I just have. But let's go ahead and bookmark this. But for stuff like mana powder, I'll want to set up something that if I have less than a threshold, I should automatically export, some type of powder to be dropped here. So as I was saying, when we have less than 2,000 mana powder, I want this to turn on. That will turn on this export bus, which is active with signal. Since redstone here sends it into the open crate. So since I have over 2,000 right now, let me withdraw some to turn this on just to make sure it works. And there it goes. I guess we could probably even deal with having a few acceleration cards on this to make it a little bit faster. There we go. I don't want too many acceleration cards because that'll cause us to, fill all the way up with mana powder, and I don't want it to like overshoot our threshold by too much. But I think 2 cards is a good balance. So continuing on, nether brick provided we're crafting it from nether essence. Gunpowder we just have a bunch from I think various mob farms. And if that runs out, I think it also has a very easy essence recipe. So that's taken care of. Netherite blocks, we just concluded that our mob farm is generating them. And since they're being stored in compacting drawers, they're automatically turned into blocks. And bustio is being crafted automatically by our dust maker system, our mass alchemy thing. Let's just make sure. Yep, it's configured to keep, one full drawer of it. Lava bucket. We don't have anything auto crafting this, so why don't I'll just very quickly add lava buckets to our wall here. All right, that's taken care of. Buckets, filled buckets only stack to 1, so this full drawer will only hold 7,000, yada, yada, yada. But that's enough. If I really cared, since, these are individually storage bust, I could swap it out for like a cache or something, which is the whole reason I put individual storage buses on these instead of using a drawer controller. but I'm too lazy to swap it now. Anyways, with that, we have all the easy ones done as usual. Well, I guess that's not true. I haven't done another warp bag yet either, right? Let me set up another warp bag then in the one over. I'm leaving the hard part, the elemental inscription tools, for last. So now we've hit all the low-hanging fruit. Moving on then, each of these gems requires the runes, as I mentioned, and each of the runes requires one of the bases. So fire for fire, windy for air, or yada, yada, yada. And since these all have a lot in common, in the interest of if we're going to do one, we may as well do them all. Every single one of these bases takes an empty base, which I don't think I have automated yet. I can make them on demand, but again, crafting cards are required to do on-demand work. And they also require one form of silicon. So the fire base requires the red one, windy base requires the greenish one, earthen requires the blackish one, and icy requires the bluish one. So keeping that in mind, all these silicons are made from regular silicon. Then you optionally, if it's, with the exception of the earthen one, which is just silicon, you surround it with glowstone. I suspect this is redstone, and this is electrotine, and then you smelt it. So let's start with that. Let's start with the system that can make the 4 types of silicon. So what I built here will stock both silicon bools as well as all the, all the forms of silicon. We have to stock silicon bools because, this doesn't work. I have to make sure there's at least one slot reserved for sand at all times. Hold on, let me fix this. So the way I keep these machines from jamming, let's see, on to activate, I make sure there's at least one spot reserved for each of the inputs. And that way, this slot would never get filled with coal, so it'll always be able to run. Anyways, so I provide coal and sand, comes into this crafter, gets turned into sandy coal, gets sent to the redstone furnace, gets smelted into silicon bools, which gets stored in this drawer. Cool. Then, one drawer over, I transfer the silicon bools here, as well as glowstone, redstone, and electrotine through an interface. First, a sawmill cuts the bools into regular silicon. I have the nullification chamber here that will void the tiny dry rubber. I honestly don't care for it at this point. Then I send it 2 places. First of all, some of the silicon just gets sent directly to the drawer. Why is this stopped at 1 stack? Oh, because I never set this to insert on blue. Okay, so now some of this silicon will get sent to the drawer here. As we can see, the rest of it gets sent into this crafter, which combines it, depending on what's available, with redstone, glowstone, and electrotine. Again, I have the slots locked such that there will always be room for more inputs. Why are you not inputting? Oh, because I have round robin disabled. There we go. Now this should do it. Yeah? No? Why am I still not getting... Oh no, they're coming in. Okay, there we go. So it just takes it a while, I guess, to get around to it. Anyways, this creates these compounds, and I have one furnace dedicated to each of these compounds by filtering the input. Then the results that after they're cooked get looped all the way back into this drawer. So this drawer eventually will hold 8 stacks of each of these silicon types, which we will use in turn to make the runes. Before we do the runes though, let's actually dedicate one more drawer to, what's it called? Empty bases. Alright, likewise, raw ingredients provided by an interface. Crafter turns it all into empty bases, which I store in a drawer. So with 1 stack of each of these bases on hand, I'm intentionally putting a storage downgrade in here, so there's only 1 stack. I probably don't need it because everything that goes into this is automated, but I don't want to nail my all these dust too hard immediately, because I only I had these only stack up to or wherever they are. I only had them craft up to 32 stacks. So making 1 stack and then having 4 stacks in the output of the the crafter here already uses up, a significant, uses up 20 stacks of each of these dusts, which while they are auto crafting, they do take a while. These crafting tables aren't the fastest. In any event, we don't need a large number of these, immediately accessible, like through the storage bus, because my plan with these is to, slowly dip them in blood as we go. So now that we have all these bases, the next step then is we have to dip each of these into a blood altar to turn them into the elemental inscription tools. So to do this, I can either use this altar, which is my on-demand crafting altar, or I can build a fifth one. And I'm leaning towards just building a fifth altar. It has been brought to my attention that the altars can share sides. So like this would have been an excellent opportunity for these altars to share a side and would have saved on some crystal clusters. But at this point, I don't want to, tear it all down to move it 2 blocks just to save a few crystal clusters and runes. So yeah, I'm just going to build a fifth altar, here, and we'll use this new altar to handle all these inscription tools. All right, I built the altar and the, I guess we call it like the input side. My plan is I'll have these export buses that are turned on by level emitters when we have, below a threshold of each of these, not the bases, but the elemental inscription tools. Pin these real quick just for my convenience. What order? Red, green, or red. What does this one make? Red. Air. Then earth. Then water. Just so I keep everything in order. All right. So as long as I have below a threshold of, fire inscription tools, then I will have this export, I want these all below, and the export bus will send the appropriate raw input into these chests. These are the, 1 slot mini chests that basically hold up to 1 slot of any item. Then I have a retriever here set to, from a random slot, retrieve up to 8 items at a time and put them into the blood altar. That's what'll do the crafting. And then on the output side, I just have to, set an extract filter on these 4 elemental inscription tools to send them back into the ME system, or drawers, one or the other. They don't stack, I guess, so probably I can just send them directly into the ME system. So all I have to do is configure some of these export buses, plug all this in, and we should be good to give this a run. So I ended up setting the thresholds here at 100. I feel like every other pack, I switch between whether I want it to be default, like whether I want export buses to be default on or default off. I think I've, for now anyway, settled on I want export buses to be default off and active with redstone. That way, while the system's booting up, they, if the export bus boots before the level emitters boot, which I think is something that can, very reasonably happen, then because level emitters default to an off state, it won't result in sending items. Basically, so while the game is, starting up, and while my ME system is starting up when my game starts up, like when I first log in, it doesn't result in sending in extra items here. Anyways, so that just, crafts them into their inscription tools. They'll ultimately get sent into an ME interface when they're done, and we should see elemental inscription tools are ticking up for the 4 primal ones. Once they get above 100, the export bus will turn off. It'll still make the 64 that are left in here, so it'll have a little bit of inertia, but eventually it'll stop. All right, so now we've automated the crafting of the inscription tools, which, as far as I can tell, is, let's see, I can unpin that, is the last item in runes. At least the rune of fire. So, can I not pin from there? Oh, I have it pinned. It's just hiding. All right, so let's start with the rune of fire. All these other runes, here, you know what, let's bookmark them all next to each other. Fire, air, earth, and water. All right, so all these other runes are similar, except their inputs are slightly different, and I'll have to craft these inputs differently. However, we'll start with fire. So The Rune of Fire takes, I believe it's exactly 9 inputs. My plan is to make a ME subnet for each rune, provide the inputs through our main network to the subnet, and then we'll let the subnet use or we'll let the subnet handle the crafting. So let me make a runic altar for each, and in fact I want the not just a regular runic altar, but I want an elven altar for each. So here's the system I built for it. Looks pretty intimidating. Let's break it down bit by bit. First of all, we can consider only one slice of this at a time, because each slice is for one rune. So this slice is for fire runes, this one will be for the next rune, yada yada yada. These terminals are also only for debug purposes, they don't have to stay here in the final build. But what I'm doing is, I'm having an ME interface provide all the raw ingredients, all 9 of them, 1 copy of each, to a subnet. In the subnet you can see there's 1 copy of each ingredient, and what I'm doing is I have a ME interface with a pattern for Rune of Fire and a export bus with a crafting card. You heard me, I'm using a crafting card. It's actually okay to use crafting cards in certain circumstances. The 2 rules that really have to be met is, first of all, the subnet has, or the net that's doing the crafting, the network that's doing the crafting has to be small. The smaller it is, the easier it is for it to calculate the crafting plan. Yes, it succeeds. No, it doesn't succeed. Secondly, as much as possible, you want the craft to never fail. A failed craft is pretty expensive because it has to determine stuff like, well, first of all, the process of determining a failed craft versus a successful craft, like for a successful craft, as soon as you calculate the plan, you're done. For a failed craft, you're not done until you've gone through and iterated over the entire crafting tree. So this will basically never fail as long as we have the ingredients, and it's a very small subnet, so the calculating of the crafting plan should be trivial. So what happens is, it should try to craft one. It sees, okay, I can, I have all this stuff. It goes to craft it. It sends all the materials into this mechanical user, which right-clicks them onto the altar one by one. In the final build, there will be speed upgrades to make this faster, but I don't know how many speed upgrades we could have before it breaks, because if it clicks too fast, it'll click past the actually no, it won't. So normally if it clicks too fast, you'll end up clicking past, and then you get the next set of items and you start clicking those on too. However, this should never try to craft more than 1 set at a time, so I guess let's actually try it now. Speed upgrades. We'll start with 4 because those are the basic upgrades. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that when the craft is done, I actually do have to put the items back into this network. So let's actually grab a vacuum chest. As you can see, I just built it. I haven't tested it yet, but I like to do the first test on camera just so we can see, did I do it right or not. And a filter. Grab some filters, put a filter here. We want this vacuum chest to only grab runes of fire, and we need an import bus. Let's see, the import bus will, if I do this, the input bus will import it, then this doesn't, actually, but then this subnet needs storage somewhere. So I guess we'll give it a chest with a storage bus. I hope you see where I'm going with this. I know I'm not exactly talking through my thoughts very well here, but let me put this storage bus on, and then I'll walk through it again. There we go. So what should happen is, first of all, I should have completed this craft. So when this subnet requests a craft, right, it goes to craft the items. The items get sent to the mechanical user. The crafting happens. There's a hidden mechanical user down here that's always hitting it with the wand of the forest. When the craft starts running, I set a redstone signal of 1 is detected, which comes to this red channel on this redstone conduit, and it disables mechanical user. it's come to my attention that I think this is technically not required because of the way that the export bus will only request one set of crafts at a time. But it's still good, I think. It'll prevent it from getting jammed. Anyways, when the redstone signal is 2, that means the craft is, done accepting mana. The redstone, that'll activate the green channel here, which comes up to our dropper, which drops a single piece of living rock on the altar. Again, our hidden mechanical user here completes the craft. The runes come into this vacuum chest and get stored into, on the storage bus here. And if the craft is normally... Sorry, how do I word this? If the craft is executed by the export bus, then the export bus will automatically pull the Rune of Fire out of here and send it into this mini chest, which all I have left to do is to put another import bus, this time on the main network here, to re-intake the items. I need a cable to re-intake the items into our main ME network. And the last thing I need to do is from our main network put a level emitter to control this export bus. But we should see it's just crafting away now. So this way I can have it automatically craft all the runes behind the scenes at very minimal computational cost. One small correction. I realized I don't actually have access to any sides of this export bus to send it a redstone signal. All 6 sides next to it are in use. So I think instead I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the redstone card instead of on this export bus. So I can pull this here. I'll put it on this import bus, active with signal. And then what will happen is when this chest fills up, the export bus will stop sending runes to it. Like so. This import bus is active with signal, and the level emitter controlling it has its threshold. In fact, I might want to set this higher. Set at 5,000 runes of fire. Less than 5,000 it turns on, turns this on, causes this chest to get emptied, causes this whole system to run. For the finishing touches, I've copied the changes I made on our the fire rune one over to the other 4, and I added an interface here to automatically keep our droppers fully stocked with living rock. One thing I do want to keep in mind actually is while I'm running all of these, I will actually consume living rock way faster than we're producing it with this system, right? Right now this produces 8 living rock a minute. Well, this, just one of these can probably consume, I don't know, maybe if we think it takes 10 seconds a cycle, it'll consume 1 living rock every 6 seconds. Or 6 living rock every minute, sorry. So if we want to run all of them, we do have to step up our living rock production in some way, shape, or form. Or I guess we can count on the fact that we have a 74,000 living rock buffer to keep us. Basically, each living rock produces 2 runes. So that's enough for 140,000 runes. Maybe just the buffer is enough to keep us going, actually. In any event, the rest of the runes still require a little bit more work. Like air runes here, we have to, automate cottonseed bags and wildwood leaves. And maybe concentrated cloud seed. I forget what, my point is there's still a little bit of work left to do for all of these other runes. So how about we put that off for tomorrow, because I think we're running out of time today. We'll come back tomorrow and finish up the rest of the runes, but we essentially have the framework for large-scale rune automation done. And I think this will make a good thumbnail for the video too. In any event, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.